She has been called a prostitute for 2,000 years. Paintings, films, novels, and even church tradition turned her into a symbol of sexual sin and scandal. But the Bible never once calls her that. Mary Magdalene is perhaps the most misunderstood, most misrepresented woman in all of Scripture. And when you strip away 2,000 years of myth and assumption, what you find underneath is something far more powerful, far more personal, and far more relevant to your life today. This is her real story. The Bible tells us two things about Mary Magdalene before she ever meets Jesus. First, she was from Magdala, a real town, a real place on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. She was not a nameless figure. She had an identity, a hometown, a history. Second, and this is the part that changes everything, she had been possessed by 7 demons. 7. Not 1, 7. We do not know exactly what that looked like in her daily life, but we know it was severe enough that Luke specifically mentions it, and severe enough that it defined her existence before Christ. This was a woman in profound darkness, a woman whose life, before Jesus, was not her own. She was not a sinner worse than anyone else. She was a woman in desperate need of a deliverer. And that deliverer was coming. We are not given the details of exactly how or when Jesus cast the 7 demons out of Mary Magdalene. The Bible does not dramatize it. It simply states it as fact, as if to say, this is what Jesus does. He sets people free. But consider what that moment must have meant for her. A woman who had lived under the weight of 7 demonic presences. A woman who had been avoided, perhaps feared, certainly pitied. A woman who had no control over what tormented her. And then Jesus came. And it was gone. All of it. In one encounter with Christ, the thing that had defined her entire existence was simply removed. This is who Jesus is. He does not walk past the ones the world has written off. He walks directly toward them. After her deliverance, Mary Magdalene did something remarkable. She followed Jesus. Not occasionally, not from a comfortable distance. She followed him from Galilee to Jerusalem. She supported his ministry with her own resources. She was present at the Last Supper events. She was there in the garden. And when the moment came that tested every follower of Jesus, when the soldiers came and the disciples fled into the night, Mary Magdalene did not run. She stood at the foot of the cross. Think about the courage that required. Think about the love that required. The man she owed everything to, her sanity, her freedom, her very identity, was being publicly executed. And she refused to leave him. Peter denied him. The others ran, but Mary stayed. Loyalty like that is not common, it is not easy, and God noticed. 3 days after the crucifixion, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb before sunrise. She came to anoint a dead body. She came expecting nothing but grief. Instead, she found the stone rolled away, the tomb empty, and in her devastation, weeping, alone, not understanding, a figure appeared in the garden. She thought he was the gardener. And then he said her name. Mary. One word, her name, spoken by the risen Christ. And in that moment, Mary Magdalene became the first human being in history to see the resurrected Jesus. Not Peter, not John, not any of the 12. A woman who had once been possessed by 7 demons. A woman the world had written off. A woman who had stayed when everyone else ran. God chose her to be the first witness of the greatest event in human history. That is not an accident. That is a statement. So where did the prostitute story come from? In 591 AD, more than 500 years after Mary lived, Pope Gregory I gave a sermon in which he merged Mary Magdalene with two other unnamed women in the Gospels, a sinful woman who anointed Jesus' feet and Mary of Bethany. He concluded, without biblical basis, that they were all the same person, and that Mary Magdalene had been a prostitute. The Catholic Church officially corrected this in 1969, but by then the damage was done. Centuries of art, literature, and film had already cemented the false image. The Bible never calls Mary Magdalene a prostitute. Not once. Not even close. What the Bible calls her is this: a delivered woman, a devoted follower, a faithful witness, the first evangelist of the resurrection. That is who she actually was. Mary Magdalene's story is for every person who has ever felt defined by their darkest chapter, for every woman who has been misrepresented, misunderstood, or dismissed, for every person who has carried something so heavy they stopped believing they could be used by God, for everyone who has stayed faithful when it would have been easier to walk away. Here is what God wrote into Mary's story for you. He comes to the ones the world has written off. He speaks your name in the garden of your grief, and He does not just restore you, He sends you. He gives you a mission. He makes you a witness. Mary Magdalene went from 7 demons to first witness of the resurrection. That is not a small story. That is the heart of the gospel itself, that no darkness is too deep, no past too broken, no person too far gone for the grace of Jesus Christ. Whatever has defined you before today, it does not have to define you after this moment. If Mary Magdalene's story spoke to something in your heart today, if you needed to hear that God has not written you off, please like this video and subscribe to His Story Told. Every week, we go deeper into the lives of the people of the Bible and the lessons God left in their stories for every one of us. Hit the bell so you never miss an episode, and share this with a woman in your life who needs to hear that she is seen, she is chosen, and she is sent. History is His story, and it is still being written. We will see you in the next one.